What if I told you that an athlete who had never competed before became the number one ranked grappler in all of Canada in only 2 years? Not through grinding endless technical drills, not through perfecting isolated movements thousands and thousands and thousands of times, but by embracing what coaches would call unstructured play. Today's guest, Andre Grandbois, runs the Grappling Garden in Hamilton, Ontario, where he's flipped the script on traditional martial arts coaching. Instead of drilling techniques until they're picture perfect, his athletes learn through games, constraints, and here's the kicker: they're dominating competitors who've been training the right way for decades. But here's what really got my attention. Andre doesn't just apply this approach to martial arts. He uses it with his 10-year-old son playing tennis. He sees it in how we learn guitar, how we parent, and how we navigate life itself. This conversation goes deep into why learning is messy, why failure is essential, and why the methods that feel less structured might actually be the key to breakthrough performance. Speaking of breakthroughs in learning, I'm excited to announce that my book, The Play Advantage, is now published and available on Amazon or through my Stand store. You'll find both links in the description. This book dives into exactly what Andre and I discussed today: how play-based learning creates superior results across all domains of life. Today's guest is Andre Grandbois from the Grappling Garden, and we're about to explore how constraints create freedom, how games build champions, and why everything you think you know about skill acquisition might be holding you back. This is the Unfinished Podcast, where learning is messy, conversations are real, and we're all figuring it out as we go. Let's dive in. All right, let's get things rolling. Andre, thanks for taking time out of your day. Sit down, chit chat with me, shoot the shit about all things, skill, learning, adaptation, all that stuff. Before we kind of roll right into this whole messy thing of our conversation that's going to unfold, tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, where are you? What brings you here?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I very much appreciate the time to talk to you. I have done a couple of podcasts at this point with some other people on similar topics, and I find it's not only a good way to get out there what we're doing at the Grappling Garden, but also I always learn a lot. Having to articulate my thoughts and then, bounce them off you and hear your thoughts. I'm sure I'm going to walk away from this knowing more than when I came in, or having maybe more questions or more problems to go solve. Um, so as I said, I'm my business is called the Grappling Garden. It's primarily a grappling martial arts club in Hamilton. We're just outside of Toronto. We've been in business for about 10 years, but about 3 years ago, we fully switched to using CLA as the method for coaching.
Perfect. And also, too, like, who knows? Like, with what you mentioned, too, you might come away smarter. I might come away I'll most likely come away smarter from this. Sometimes I don't think of myself as that expert type of person to, spew it. I'm just a guy. As Greg Souders told me, I'm just a guy rolling down a hill like a marble, and I hit the right bumps, hit the right rocks. Um, as you
Yeah.
were mentioning that you started implementing CLA at the Grappling Garden, tell me about like some of the observations that you've seen from the traditional model of coaching and competing. When you started implementing this, when did you start implementing this?
Uh, 2.5, 3 years ago, I was coaching. I coach a wide variety of athletes from recreational to professional, and I was coaching some fighters out at another gym in Niagara, and one of them mentioned this guy who's teaching through games. I thought that's interesting, and I looked it up, and I was like, wow, this is very interesting. This makes a lot of sense to me, and so I didn't hesitate jumping on a call with Greg and hearing his thoughts, and started listening to Rob Gray, and then I went out to Standard, Greg's gym, for a few days and learned, and we jumped headfirst into applying this after that. Um, what was your initial question? No, I forgot what you asked
It's
there.
all good. Just like it was kind of a two-parter. Just like when did you kind of have this revelation, and then two, like what
What have
have
I
you
noticed?
seen? Yeah, what have you noticed since kind of diving headfirst into this?
hmm Well, I've been listening to that podcast that you had. I'm sorry, I forget her name again. Panther Flows. What's
Kathy Sierra.
Kathy? I've been listening to your podcast with Kathy this week. There's a lot in that podcast to digest. So I've been,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It was a 2 hour conversation that just went on, and time flowed really quick. And I re-listened to it quite a bit, and I reach out to Kathy about a lot of different things too. There's a lot to unpack with that one.
yeah, and it's excellent. And this week it kind of got me in, thinking about our youth. We have a youth development program, and a big emphasis of what I heard her talk about with the horses and what we apply with our kids is intrinsic motivation, making it fun, making it engaging so that the learner wants to learn and be engaged in that process. So I've observed a number of things applying CLA, in terms of the level of skill rising, but the biggest thing I've noticed is it's more engaging and fun. There's more intrinsic motivation in the athletes, as far as I can tell. Um, yeah, everyone's just having a good time,
That's
and,
good. I
and
mean,
yeah, and I think, like, if you're having fun, you're going to last longer. You're going to build stronger community ties. You're going to build stronger relationships, and inevitably, you'll learn more over time.
that's pretty much well round from like the conversations that I've had. I started kind of like diving into these theories and ideas, like this. I look at it as an umbrella and not just like silos where you have nonlinear pedagogy, constraint-led approach, ecological dynamics, and psychology, all of that like 5 years ago. And I was in the sports performance world, and I started kind of implementing this, and kind of under the wing of Tyler Yerby, who was at the time. Now he's pretty prominent in this world. Um, I noticed that right away that it was more fun, a little bit, a lot more engaging, and I was working with youth athletes predominantly at the time. And as a male coach at the time, I worked with the female softball team where I was at, and they hated coming in. And then I started working with them, and they wanted to come in more and more because it was more engaging. It was fun. One of the things that is kind of an overarching, I guess, battle between, the eco D approach, this nonlinear approach to what has been taught for millennia now, or I guess I can't say millennia through my deep dives and stuff, but have you noticed that there's been that combativeness between, oh, this looks more like play and unstructured versus it has to be a certain way, a step by step approach?
I haven't experienced that much on my end, like in my own gym. We have really good buy-in from our members. I think they put a lot of trust in us, and we've built a great relationship with them and a great community. I've noticed it's from my listening to your podcasts, I understand you practice martial arts.
No,
Do you do?
not at all.
No, okay,
Not. I am the further. It's kind of funny. Including yourself, I've had three martial arts guests and then two equestrian horse people, and I am the furthest thing away from any of that. So,
okay.
yeah, no, I. It's just the reason why they've popped on, including yourself, is just like, you know, I've noticed that the martial arts world is adopting this mindset much more with open arms versus, in America, like football, baseball, all that stuff, and like adopting it that way. That's just my perspective.
So Yeah, I asked because I wanted to know if you were kind of in the know of the dialogue between these two camps, and it's there. There's a lot of tribalism, like there is in everything. There's a lot of argument back and forth, a lot of uninformed argument on both sides, and I think it's unfortunate, and it doesn't have to be that way. I listen a lot to this volleyball podcast, and it's heavily biased towards ecological dynamics and CLA and differential learning. It's called Coach Your Brains Out. It's excellent. And in one episode, it was either the person being interviewed or the interviewer. They were saying effective coaching is about landing on the methods and the tools and the ideas that best fit you as an individual coach. And I thought that was really insightful and freeing, because ultimately these are all theories. These are all theories. We don't actually know. We can observe and measure a bit and kind of take a shot in different directions. But at the end of the day, they are theories. So there is this dichotomy in the jiu-jitsu world and the grappling world of eco versus traditional, and it doesn't need to be that way. I think it's silly, and I think it holds coaches back from developing on both sides. So there is a
I
prominent argument going on. Yeah.
no, I hear you, and I feel like that's a lot with just learning in general, because there's that traditionalism between, like, from what we've been raised to do, like going through school, going through sports, and coaches telling you, oh, here's this drill to do this specific task or this specific skill, and you need to master this skill in order to, move up a level in development and all that stuff. And when I was fully involved in the sports performance world, like that's how I was raised, quote unquote, raised in that world. Is like, you learn these progressions, you learn that you have linear periodization, block periodization, all of this, and it's really decontextualized, because it's like, one, you have the science, you have all that, and it has to be that way. And when starting to implement this into that world, a lot of, I got this from the parents and the CEOs and head coaches, where it's like, that doesn't look structured. That doesn't look what we've been doing or what I did 30 years ago as an athlete and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, there is a little bit of a disconnect. And I think at the root of it, it's ego. I, that's my firm belief, is ego. And people think, oh, this is what I've been doing for 30 plus years and it's worked. But I look at it as, what's the main measurement, or the KPI, key performance indicator. And I look at that as the performance. Like, how well do you do on, game day? And if you completely get obliterated, you have to take a step back and look at it. And I look at that as learning in general, from, a school standpoint. The reason why I dive into like the school structure in here in the US especially, is because I have a 15-month-old daughter who I'm actively applying some of this stuff to her learning and development. Also applying it to, my dog. If you hear any snoring, she's right here. So she's a French bulldog and she snores like all hell. And then I apply it to, my guitar playing, trying to implement it there, implement it with my wife and like all that. Have you ventured out into any other domains and have seen this connection between, traditional versus this nonlinear eco? And how have you taken, if you have noticed that, how have you taken that into your own coaching with in the grappling garden?
When I first spoke to Greg on that call a few years ago, he said, "At this stage, I've dove so far deep into this idea and these theories that it's the lens in which I view everything, not just skill acquisition on the mats.
Uh-huh.
And I have to say I have a similar experience. Um, you mentioned your 15-month-old daughter. I have a 10-year-old son, and very very engaged with him. And just this morning we were out at the park and we brought our tennis rackets and some balls, and I think in the past I would have said, okay, you need to grip the racket in this way and point it in this direction and swing it in this way. You're hitting it too hard, and now the racket's you're hitting it like on a slice, and now I just see these as opportunities to explore and solve problems. So, for example, he was hitting it like that, like the edge of the racket. So I made a game. I'm like, why don't we see how often we can hit it on the edge of the racket? Let's turn that into a game. And then he wanted to kill the ball. Like he was just trying to, sorry, he was just trying to crush
Don't
it.
worry. Don't
Okay.
worry.
And in the past, I would have been like, you're hitting it too hard, you're losing. I thought, okay, why don't we go into that open soccer field and just smash this ball as high as we can, see how high we can get it. And then we ended up playing a game where it was like, let's bounce the ball on a racket. And I've been reading a lot more about external focus for cueing versus internal focus. Let's see if we can recreate the sound that it makes when it hits the middle of the racket instead of the dull sound that the ball makes when it hits closer to the rim. So we were trying to get as many bounces as we could, creating that sound. And it was so fun. It was such a lovely time with him. And it's just one time we went out there, but we're going to keep doing it over the summer. And I have no doubts that by the end of the summer, he'll be more skillful with a racket and it will have been a fun experience. Like, I'm very hesitant to sign him up for tennis lessons because I don't want a coach telling him where to shift his weight, how to angle his wrist. And I had actually emailed you about that. It's the same thing with track and field here. There is a track and field program, but I feel like they're just going to work on their running mechanics. That's the sense I get.
Uh-huh.
And I had asked you in the email when we were first setting this up if you have any suggestions and ideas about how to introduce your kids to track and field at an early age and make it fun and using these methods.
Well, as a former track and field athlete myself, I was a discus thrower by nature, and it was pretty successful. Wanted to actually get the Olympic, make the Olympic team, and just have those high aspirations and whatnot. But track and field, from my experience as an athlete and as a coach, and I used to be a throws coach at the time after I graduated, and working as a strength coach for track and field teams. Holy shit, they are the most technical people ever. And I was one of them because as an athlete, looking back at my journey, like I drilled thousands and thousands of reps that for me, one of my biggest things that I was so focused on was like out of the back of the throw, I wanted to turn my left all the way so it's pointing down towards where I was throwing. And I drilled just my left foot going over and over and over and over. And then when I threw, nothing happened. Like
Mm.
nothing happened. And then whenever I went to
Yeah.
camps, like I went to camps in high school and uh, kind of post collegiately with my coach at the time, like he was teaching a system. Like this is how you do the throw. It's like it's broken down into 6 pillars of the shot put and discus. And I was just like, that was my lens at the time. And I was like, oh, I see this. And I was teaching it that way when I was coaching, and it never translated. And I was just like, what the heck? Even to my throw, like it never translated. And I was like, what the hell is going on? Looking at all these drills that running coaches, sprint coaches, all these coaches do is so like mechanical. And I was talking with Rob Gray about this one time, Actually, before I relaunched this whole podcast, I had him on my previous podcast, and I asked him kind of the same question. And basically, what he said was just incorporating some type of novelty and play structure. But since it is such a individual event because it is you performing on meet day, like, and it's so like structured. It's you're throwing an implement as far as you can. You're trying to jump as far or high as you can. You're trying to run as fast as you can, all that stuff. That's it. There's no variability within any of that. I now that was my lens before. How to implement and this take this all with a grain of salt because I'm actually thinking of this on the spot. How to implement kids to do stuff within track and field, gamify the shit out of it early on, I believe. If for the throws, just have them throw the thing and just have fun. Like, hey, throw this thing as far as you can and don't fall out of the circle. Like, that's it.
Mhm.
I don't care about that. Like, get it in their hands, throw. Racing, make it a race. Like, hey, 100-meter dash, like, try to go from point A to point B as fast as you can. Don't let this person beat you. Stuff like that. Just make them think about that. Don't make them think about, hey, like, perfect arm angles, perfect shin, knee, ankles, all that stuff. It's just arbitrary. It's going to happen if they work on that over time and if they're coached right. That's my thought about it, especially getting someone to do it early on. Um, and knowing with Canada, like I believe Dylan Armstrong is the throws coach over in Kamloops, I believe, because that's where I believe Dr. Bondarchuk was for a long time. And with the throws and especially that, like they have such a good program. And with, is it Ethan, I believe? Yeah, the hammer thrower who's like 24 years old, 25 years old, who won the Olympics.
That
Such
was
a young,
incredible.
which yeah, that is incredible. But
Yeah.
I was looking at his progression, and he started throwing at a very young age. I
Mhm.
believe. I again, I could be completely wrong, but I think what he was doing is just. I think I came across something that he just threw it just for fun. Like
Mhm.
have fun with it. Don't and where I kind of depleted in my career looking back is because I took out the fun. Like I was drill, 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 have to be so perfect, so mechanical. And then when it came towards meet day, like I had some success. I had won some national championships, won some All Americans, couple records here and there, but it just was like it never clicked fully during meet day. Um, so that I guess that's my thought on how to get that, and we can implement that here in America. And I mean, track and field is not the biggest spotlight in the U.S. because it's taken over by the big multi-million-dollar moneymakers like football, basketball, baseball, all of that. Um, and usually that's where things go, especially if you have someone who's a thrower and they're pretty successful, they're going to football because they're pretty big and athletic.
Mhm.
Um, that's my thought on that.
That's really helpful. Um, we do something similar in our youth program. So we have youth martial arts like youth grappling through the fall, winter, and spring. And then for the longest time, I didn't offer any kids programs in the summer because I didn't want them in the gym. I wanted them out. Like I'm a firm proponent and advocate of multi-sport athletes and youth. Like I think the evidence is overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Don't specialize your kids. Like they should be doing as many activities as possible and as much free play as possible. So we would kick the kids out and say, go away for the summer, go swim, go to cottages. But we had enough families that wanted to continue some type of programming, and it's also supportive of the business. So I thought, let's do something completely novel. Instead of offering grappling year round, let's offer a youth development program through the summer. So it's 8 weeks, 12 weeks long, and we're in essence gamifying running, sprinting, crawling, body weight exercises, quick changes of directions, jumping, tumbling. Um, and what you said about the track and field constraints, like create a circle, they have to throw something as far as they can without stepping out of that circle. That's obvious. I never thought of that, but that's something that I would like to apply. That's a lot of fun. How far can you throw this? And I'm just off the top of my head thinking you could add a ton of variability to that. Like now you have to rotate 360 degrees. Now you have to throw this 10-pound medicine ball. Now you have
Uh-huh.
to throw this tennis ball, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, that and the thing about it too is like you've probably heard it as well. Like coaching isn't more like a authoritarian role. It's more of a guide, a designer, and it's an art. Like we hear it like the book Brett Bartholomew. It says the art of coaching. It legit is an art. It's how can you be creative? How can you design activities, drills, whatever you want to call it, to improve the outcome or the intention of what you're trying to coach or teach. And like a lot of people, and I was like this too, like seeing affordances and seeing like things differently. Like, for example, I think in my upcoming book, The Play Advantage, it talks about, and I could be completely wrong. I probably wrote it in my newsletter, but it's just something that popped up. It's like, look at a chair and tell me 10 different ways that you can see the use of a chair. Instead of the usual one is you sit down in it. Well, if you're a kid, which funny enough, my niece, when she was like 2 or 3, I call her Harry Potter because she was playing with a chair as a tent and she slipped and cut the crap out of her forehead. Now she has a big scar there. But look at it. It's like it could be used as a pillow fort, used as a step stool. You could use it as a box jump, like they can jump off or off on. If you have a small child, if they're small enough, they can use it as a little jungle gym or like jungle gym where they can crawl underneath it and all that stuff. Like think of it different ways. And like you just kind of said, yeah, simple constraints, simple like structure. Put them in a circle. Throw this thing as far as you can without falling out of the circle. You That's your constraint that you're having to do. Now come up with whatever within that constraint, all of that. And like with Kathy, what really opened my eyes was the gathering dots. Like, how many dots can you collect in this experience that shape your DNA, or I like to say is your paintbrush stroke on the canvas. Like it's yours. You've probably heard of the saying, and this came up with in our conversation. Like you fall back on what your training is, or like if you like, it's like how big your foundation is, or something like that. Well, what if you only have like 5 dots? And this person has 20 dots. Like, who's going to be more successful? The person who has 20 dots, because if they're failing at a task, they have they have many more things that they've been exposed to that they can not call upon because the brain isn't like a computer that just calls upon it, but their body is like, oh, I know I've done that before, can do that. But versus the person who's only done it 5 times or it's 5 different ways. And that's kind of how I was when I was a thrower, like a discus and shot put thrower. Like I've only done it like 5 or 6 ways versus the people who are the same age as I was, 24, 25, and they're winning Olympic golds slash world records. And I'll give it to the world record holder, Mikolos Alekna. He comes from a lineage of discus throwers. His dad was a 2-time Olympic discus thrower or champion. Plus, also he's like 6'8", 6'9", and has like a 7'6" wingspan. But he's been playing and doing this for his whole life, and he has many more dots than I did. So, which kind of leads me into your your core values of all this, like implementing all of this theory, or actually applying this theory or this lens, I like to say. we talked a lot about youth athletes. How does this scale, not scale, but throughout everybody? Because you mentioned that you've worked with professional fighters as well, and anywhere in between that. Tell me about like your core values and like the gratitude and how they shape your community and how it goes from individual to individual based on where they're at in their journey.
Sure. There's a lot in that question. So I'll start with the core values. The core values of our club are growth and gratitude. Um, so growth meaning a growth mindset, an understanding that failure and adversity and struggle are opportunities to adjust the process and grow, as opposed to a focus on an outcome, being a measure of your worth. And then gratitude is gratitude. But we also try to frame that around adversity. I'm grateful for this adversity. I'm grateful for this practice that just crushed me today. I'm grateful that I ate, McDonald's before I came into practice and it made me vomit because I've learned something important from that. So adversity, struggle, and failure are things in which we teach our athletes to appreciate because they're the greatest opportunities to grow. This is deeply ingrained at our club. We talk about it regularly. And it starts with kids and it goes all the way up to our competitive athletes. Um, and someone asked me yesterday, he said I was one of the athletes at our gym said, "Hey coach, I coach free running." I think he called it free running.
Hmm.
I think that's like kind of like parkour.
Yep.
Okay. And he said, what have been the most influential people or things you've read or listened to in your journey in developing as a coach? And the first thing that came to mind was a clarity on my core values. So, more important than any method or idea that anyone's ever shared with me, what's allowed me to become the coach that I am today and the mentor that I am today is clarity on my core values, my personal core values. They're not growth and gratitude. Those are definitely tie in there, but I have four very clear definitions of my personal core values. And coming to know, it took like I'm 40, so I didn't get clear on that stuff till my mid 30s. Not to say it should take that long, but up until that point, I'd say I was not effective in coaching, or even as a father or a partner or a friend. It was that deep understanding of what is fulfilling to me and what is of value to me, and how do I want to be in this world towards others, and how do I want to leave this world. That helped me be able to really effectively apply these methods in coaching across all demographics. So that's the number one thing. Um, Now, that being said, yeah, we have a wide demographic of people, and it can be so unlike maybe your experience where you have a team or you were coaching and playing at an NCAA level. We're a for-profit business, so we've got kids and adults and teens. We've got some that come twice a week, some that are out of shape, some that are in shape, coming 6 days a week. We've got some that compete at an amateur level. We've got some that compete in the UFC. And we can create opportunities for these kind of silos and groups of people to work together, but inevitably they blend in some of our practices. So one of the problems I've enjoyed solving is how to mix them together. Um, so, for example, if we have some grappling competitors, some young guys, some 20-year-olds who have aspirations to win a world championship, and they work hard and they're in there 7 days a week and they're lifting and their diet's on point. And then we've got maybe a 20-year-old who's going to school training twice a week, or a 30-year-old dad who's a lawyer, he comes 3 times a week. How do we mix them together? And I've found that the constraint-led approach is far more effective and much easier to do that than the traditional way. And it's as simple as further constraining the more advanced athlete. So if I give you a task and I say your task is to tag my knee. So that's going to start like we're standing facing each other and I want you to tag my knee. That's starting to teach you some important skills about that would lead towards a takedown, a type of tackle. The more advanced athlete, I might constrain them to you first have to connect to your partner's elbows or the back of their head with the purpose of getting them moving. You've got to make them step in any direction, connect to their elbows, and then use that to get them to step in any direction before you're allowed to tag the knee. So we can constrain them to a different degree or a different task or a more complex task that allows them to engage with the lesser skilled athlete, and everyone is still growing and learning. Um, Now, in terms of all the demographics that we've coached, I honestly haven't seen a significant difference between them in like who's more keen to do it this way or who is it working better for. I think it's working great for all of them. I've had a little bit of pushback from some of the adult athletes who came from the more traditional model, but I think it's just a matter of conversation and exposure over time. And then inevitably, some people have left. I'm sure some people have left the gym wanting to go back somewhere else and do what they were doing before, and that's fine, right? Um, so that's been my experience so far. I'm not sure if anything in there kind of resonated or piqued your interest.
No, for sure. There's always something. I always try and find something. I always try and dig. There's actually there's one I kind of want to back up to, I like learning more about my guest a little bit more. And you mentioned something back in your mid 30s that kind of like is something kind of what I'm going through is kind of figure out what you want to do in this world before, we leave eventually, which is inevitable. Was there a certain moment in time that kind of just made you like
Mm.
that aha or oh shit moment?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go back to when I was 17 or 18, and bear with me. I'm going to read you a poem.
Absolutely.
Okay, so my grandfather on my mom's side, was a incredible man. He was tall, 6'2", quiet. He was a surgeon in the war, World War II, and I had the fortune of knowing him and being somewhat close to him, as close as you can be as like a young teenager and kid. And then he passed. He passed away. Um, and at his funeral, my aunt read this poem. I'd never heard it before, and she said this was one of the most meaningful poems to him. And I heard it at that young age, and I thought that's perfect. And I've since adopted that as my I don't know, motto in life or mantra in life. I have it framed beside my bed, and I try to read it as often as possible. So let me just find this. If you give me 1 second.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so it's by a man named Robert Louis Stevenson. The man is a success who has lived well, laughed often, and loved much, who has gained the respect of intelligent men and the love of children, who has filled his niche and accomplished his task, who leaves the world better than he found it, whether by an improved poppy, a perfect poem, or a rescued soul, who never lacked appreciation of earth's beauty or failed to express it, who looked for the best in others and gave the best he had. So that's by Robert Louis Stevenson. And that was one of the first things that kind of led me down this path. Um, I would say another big component was I was working closely with, he's a counselor by trade, and he's moved into mental performance work with athletes. So he works with NHL players. He works with the UFC fighter that I coach. And in our first time talking, his name's Danny Patterson. In his first time talking, he had me write my obituary. So he said, if you were to die, what would you want your obituary to say about you? And I did the exercise. And within what I wrote, it became very apparent what was important to me. And the number one thing was mentorship. That was the first core value I landed on. That was just oozing out of my obituary. Like every line was about some form of mentorship towards people and having helped people and guided people and given them a great experience. And so I would say those two things were quite pivotal in me figuring that out. I'm sure it sounds, like I can kind of tease out from how you've talked about school that you've had your share of struggles as well growing up, and um, there's other, significant contributing factors to me being the coach I am today, and it all comes through suffering, and pain and loss, and just like in the skill that we're teaching, like there is no growth, there is no learning without failure and struggle and loss, and I think life is no different.
I 1000% agree with you. And honestly, I appreciate you being open and transparent and telling me about uh, your experience when, your grandfather passed away and all that. And you connected things pretty well there. And I talk about how learning is messy. It's never polished. And that's kind of the reason behind this podcast, the Unfinished podcast. It's not perfect. By all means, it's never going to be perfect. I'm using this more as a learning opportunity myself because I'm learning from others and I'm learning also, how to speak because I have a million things going on in my head and I just can't articulate it really well. And so this has been a messy era throughout my life. Currently, right now, I'm learning so much about myself because right now I'm currently unemployed and I have been for about 3 months now. So like trying to figure out ways to, survive when we putting our daughter through daycare, paying a mortgage, all of that stuff. And so coming up with ways to, not just make money, but also do it in a meaningful and purposeful way. And that's where I really leaned more into writing and mentorship along those lines. And um, it's when you look back at it, and I've talked with other people as well, like they look back at those moments that are just so pivotal, and it's 9 times out of 10, like they're in times of suffering, and just and that's really what shapes a person, and those should never be overshadowed, even like any of the little things throughout life as well, because it's messy. It's you got peaks and valleys of good times and bad times. This is just a valley of my time right now. Like I'm just trying to figure things out. Now, with all of that, with getting to know your story a little bit more and where all of this really comes from the roots, when you get someone that's new to your gym, this is just me being speculative, like they are coming in like not knowing what the heck to expect. They've been taught a certain way, and they're like, oh, I'm obviously something piqued their interest to step through the door, but how do you coach slash teach someone to embrace the mess? Because a lot of times, and I've certainly been one, and it still gets me to this day where like I get so mad when I make a mistake. But being able to shift that perspective to, if you make a mistake, like embrace that, be grateful for it, like what you mentioned for. How do you go about teaching someone that?
Well, like anything, it doesn't happen in a practice or one talk. It's a series of practices and engagements and talks. But we have different layers to help accomplish this. So the first is that there has to be an element of trust. And I think ultimately, at the base level, what everyone is looking for is connection. Before, whether they know it or not, before the self-defense skill or the fitness skill. So from the moment they walk in, we've created an environment that's really welcoming and but honestly welcoming, not like, hey, we're so happy you're like legitimately, Sam, like I'm so happy you came through the door. I really want to help you with this. Like you said you want X, Y, and Z. Like let's fucking do it. Can I swear? I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Okay. Um, and and then as I said, we have different layers. So I don't I make a, I try not to rattle on and be like there's this thing in martial arts where the coaches kind of take on the air of like a Tony Robbins and they're the master and they have this wisdom and they like to talk at the end of practice and I just briefly at the end of practice regularly remind people that learning is messy. Failures, adversity, and struggles are essential. So you may have had a practice today where you were frustrated. The frustration is fine. The losses are fine. Identify one thing you want to adjust for next practice. Write it down somewhere. So we have those kind of conversations. We have individual conversations one on one when athletes come to us, and we always take the time and we invite that. And then something we've applied with our competitors. So we have a competitive team. We have tryouts in the summer, and then our season starts in the fall. And this year we have 40 competitors. Um, we have a journal. So it's something that I've created, I've built out, and something in that journal is pre and post practice reflections. So pre-practice would be what are your intentions today? It's a sandbox. It's open. It could just be I want to feel better leaving practice than when I came in. I want to have fun. Or it could be specific. I want to off balance the top opponent X amount of times, or I want to win in this way. And then the pre practice reflections are did I meet my intentions? And if not, why? What's one thing I did well today? What's one thing I will adjust next practice? And what's one adversity that I'm grateful for and why? And every competitor on the team is required. This is a requirement to be on the team. They have to do this every single practice, and they're coming to a minimum of 6 practices a week. This is the adults and the older teens, not the kids. So they're getting 6 journal entries a week over 4 to 8 months, where each journal is acknowledging the struggle they faced, how they can adjust, how it's benefiting them, and then it feeds the next journal entry. And that's been one of the most powerful things we've applied here. And I'm remembering now something, a thought I had of digging into the research to see if there's anything looking at specifically CLA and reflective psychology or intention, um, because I've seen the two meld together and merge together and create like absolutely incredible outcomes. In 2 years, I had an athlete who had never competed before. He was skillful on the mat, like he looked good, and he said to me before he started his first season, he's like, "Coach, I don't know if I want to compete. It's scary. I'm not sure if it's for me." He decided to do it, and the end of last season, his second season, he's ranked number one in Canada for ADCC, which is the biggest organization on the planet. Um, and that's just one story. We've got many athletes going through this, and I think I have a feeling it's the merging of CLA and this intentionality and reflection and journaling and growth, emphasis on growth mindset. I forget
I
your initial question. I kind of rambled there.
no worries. No, you actually you kind of not beat around the bush, but I kind of like that because it's where your mind is going and that and like where your curiosity and where what path you're taking there. So no worries, you did answer my question.
Okay.
So one thing that is pretty profound, you said that you have a guy who's number one in Canada, and you have many others who are like this, are like following the same kind of like not path, but whatnot. You said the guy never competed in 2 years. Is number one.
Mhm.
2 years is not a long time.
No.
That is that's amazing. And from some of the other people that I've talked to who are in this world, this martial arts world, like they're having these type of stories just come out. Like they've only been with them for, X amount of years and it's less than 5 that they're excelling and they're dominating people who have probably been in this world for decades.
Mhm.
How has that helped? I'm sure the answer to the question is yes. Like that's probably solidified a lot of things that you've been practicing in this diving into and adopting this lens.
Like confirmed it,
Yeah.
100%. But it's hard to see the forest for the trees, see the forest from the trees when you're in it.
Hmm.
Um, so you mentioned other people having success, and one of your guests, Greg, everyone at this point in the world of grappling knows his athlete DeAndre. By all accounts, from my understanding, he was a black belt already, and he was average at best when he came to Greg. And that's difficult to do what he did at that stage. Like you've already had so much time with these habits and this method of learning, and you're at a certain age, and he has a full-time career, which is as an engineer. He recently, in my mind, in my opinion, and I think others, solidified his place as the number one athlete in his weight. He beat the two guys that won or medaled at the top in worlds. And that was very validating as well. Because like I said, when you're in it and you're in your own environment, you're doing it, you're like, I think it's working. Yeah, that ranking looks good, but is that a fluke? I don't know. But this person's doing it. But then you see someone also do it at the highest level with a career in engineering. That to me was like, okay, let's go. That gave me a lot of confidence.
No, that's good. No, for sure. Yeah. No, Greg did kind of like brush on DeAndre and all that stuff. And after our conversation, kind of like looking more into all of what he's doing, and that it is remarkable. Like seeing all that he's doing and then just accomplish something like that and in utilizing this. It's kind of like I'm this from Sean Mishka, who kind of had this Robert Frost moment because he was already successful. He was or as a coach and training football players and whatnot. But then he's like, you know what? Like I'm gonna kind of just direct it this way and do this eco approach, this eco lens, and is still having that success and being able to turn the page and just be like I've had success already, or like you could consider myself with DeAndre, like with it being a black belt, like masterful. I've reached the pinnacle, but average at best. And now he's at the top now. It is pretty confirming, and looking at all these stories that I'm seeing and hearing and people telling me, like it's pretty confirming. And like you mentioned early on, like since and with Greg too, like he's been so far down this rabbit hole that like this is all he can see, and like he's seeing it through life, and I'm witnessing that now, like seeing it with like teaching like my dog right here. She's 5 years old now, and like people say, "Oh, you can't teach an old dog new tricks." Well, that's bullshit. Like
Right.
I with someone like who is not relearning the guitar after taking 8 years off of it. I'm 30 years old and I picked it back up when I was 28. Like applying it to that and like seeing videos on YouTube of people who are do you know the band Dream Theater?
Let's go. Yeah. One of my
Love it.
probably my number one band.
Love Dream Theater. John
I get
Petrucci
excited.
is yeah.
Yeah, I
John
get
Petrucci's
excited when I meet a new fan.
yeah, no, love it. Well, I can't remember the keyboardist's name, but he's old and
Yeah.
he in his 60s picked up the guitar and I think he was interviewing I can't remember the guy's name. I saw it on social media and saw it, and he picked it up and he's only been playing for about 4 or 5 years and he's already like
He's incredible.
killing it. And I was like,
Yeah.
that also solidified it too. It's like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Like that's bullshit. And you've heard it from like the older that you get, it's harder to learn a skill, and that's just the way it's been. It's like no, absolutely not. Like being like one also too being a parent. No one ever you just learn it as it comes. Like you have
Yeah.
your son who's 10 years old.
Yeah.
Like you're thrown into it, and then you're learning as you're going. And like they're also like they're learning how to walk, talk, figure out their emotions and all that stuff. And I think what I'm seeing this shift in learning, and it's not like labeled as, oh, this is the way or ecological way. I'm seeing it subtly through, massively through the martial arts world. I'm seeing it a little bit more like subtly in the music industry, seeing it in sports, seeing it not so much in schooling as much, but it can get better that way. Of where freedom and choice and autonomy is something that is, and creativity is something that is in our nature as humans. And I'm seeing it more and more as I'm deep diving into, my last two newsletters have been, Greek mythology, Roman mythology. I'm probably going even more in that stuff. Really fascinates me. I'm a nerd that way. Um, like seeing what they did back then, like we can apply to now, and how things can be more ecological, if you want to call it that way, but more non-linear and just more creative and free, and use the CLA, all of that. Um, Going on a rant and rabbit hole there, but talk to me. So you mentioned that you like in the email that you sent me. I'm reading it right now. That you said that you share your experiences with working with UFC fighters and PFL fighters and whatnot. Tell me about that. Like, how long have they been with you, and just kind of lay it all out there for me.
That started about during the pandemic. So the fighters during the pandemic kept allegedly training, even though they weren't supposed to, allegedly, because it's their profession. That's how they make money. Um, and my coaching completely dried up because I was purely coaching amateur grapplers. So they mostly stopped. And I had a friend, Chris Prickett, who owns Niagara Top Team, probably one the better gym coming out of Canada for professional fighters. Um, and he invited me out to help coach the jujitsu, the grappling component for their fighters. So I started doing that, and I really enjoyed it. I found the constraint of coaching and grappling with strikes to be fascinating. There's just a new problem to solve. It didn't change the fundamental principles of grappling, but it drastically changed how you achieved your tasks and how you applied those principles, getting punched or punching. So I really enjoyed that. And then I was working with Jazz. She's got a fight coming up. I think next month maybe. I forget her ranking. She's pretty high up. She's in the top 10 right now. In the UFC. I was working with her originally, and then I started helping my very close friend Mike Malott, um, who is also in the UFC in the welterweight division. Um, we were friends for a long time, and then he went into the professional competitive space, and I went more into the coaching, and we came back together. You asked me how it started, right? Is that
Yeah, how it started,
yeah?
how it's going, and how have they've
Mhm.
adapted since, you started, back in 2020 or
Yeah.
pandemic era.
So that's how it started. Eventually, I moved away quite a bit from that world, and because I was able to recreate the commitment and the professionalism that I was finding there in my grappling athletes. So I had mentioned to you that we're doing something a little bit different at our club in terms of competition, and that is I've created a team modeled very similarly around how an NCAA team. I watch a lot of and listen to a lot of NCAA wrestling coaches, and I've teased out the best parts that they have to share about their program and their coaching and mentorship, and I've created a program. Whereas in the jujitsu world, people kind of just compete randomly when they want, and sometimes there's a coach there and not. So we've created a structured program. And once I created that, it drew me away from the fighters because ultimately I love grappling, and if I can get
Mm.
that greater sense of accountability from my athletes and commitment in this program, it's more interesting to me. But I've continued to work with Mike, and I will work with Mike until he's decided that he no longer wants to fight because he's a very close friend. Mike's taken to the methods beautifully. We often talk about it and engage in discussion. Like anyone who's trained, because Mike is also a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's been doing martial arts since he was a young teen. He's highly accomplished. He's coached a lot. Um, so we had a lot of discussions initially about it. But like with like with most of the athletes I've engaged with who are skeptical at first, after a few weeks, there's always like yeah, actually, this is really working for me. Um, I was thinking about this today because I thought you might bring this up, and I was thinking about one of the challenges working with fighters and why I find it more challenging. And I I think it's because as a fighter, you have three distinct skill sets in your sport. You have striking. I guess you could say two. You have striking and grappling, but most people break it into three: striking, wrestling, jujitsu. I don't think wrestling and jujitsu should be separate. I think that's the biggest issue in the jujitsu world right now. um, is we've gotten very far away from our combat roots, and the wrestling is horrendous. And but that's a separate issue. So we've got these distinct skills in fighting, and for the most part, that has resulted in having multiple coaches, so multiple cooks in the kitchen. Um, and this brings me back to something you'd mentioned much earlier in our conversation, where you've had difficulty in applying these ideas of CLA. You've had some pushback, and I was thinking, I wonder if that's because it sounds like you're coaching for an organization. There's this upper management or this upper team who are like they're making the decisions, they're the owners, they're whatever, and they're not obsessed with coaching and skill acquisition like you are. Right? They like it and they see it and they're like, this is how it's done. And so you come in and you're playing flag tag or something. And they're like, well, why are my athletes doing that? I want them throwing, hitting, running faster. And fortunately, Mike's team is great. The coaches are work very closely together and are very respectful of each other. But I do find like it's difficult. It's really difficult to work with athletes who have many coaches bringing different methods in. I found that to be really challenging, and I bet you've experienced something similar.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's that too many cooks in the kitchen. You're muddying the waters quite a bit, and it's just
Yeah.
like, but it's look at the old me would look at be like, oh yeah, no, everyone's gotta have the same vision, be on the same path and all that stuff. But then lately, looking at that, it probably helps serve the athlete a little bit more because they are gathering those dots
Mm.
of different voices, different ways to get that. From an organizational standpoint, shit, that messes everything up and it makes it so frustrating. And you hit the nail on the head there, like upper management, like there's the political side of working in, a private facility or at the NCAA level where it's just like it's got to look a certain way. And if for me, I was kind of the devil's advocate, I was the guy who came up and shook things up, but I got my results. I still have the data to this day for that um, at that point. But regardless, it is tough to do that. But being able to co-design and kind of be that tribe, I look at it because one thing that is very apparent within, the human history is we're social beings. And anytime that you do gather and like come to an understanding, if you have coaches, people who have many different coaches, whether it be, um, in my experience, whenever you just come together, collaborate, co-design, all of this, like what we're doing right now, like having this conversation, co-designing and figuring things out on the fly and understanding one another, things become better. It's that social, I look at it as social architecture of, human learning and even animal learning too, because, funny, another rabbit hole I'm going down. Someone told me that they kind of believed that they, they read a study about something of like, I think he made it up too. Like if you put 10 monkeys in a room with a typewriter and they've never seen a typewriter before versus 10 monkeys who have gotten some fundamental understanding of the typewriter, that the ones that have been taught already would be a little bit more successful. And I actually advocate for the ones that haven't been taught because if one monkey does something, that's like a ripple effect to the others. And others will try that and they'll try something else and make a mistake. That's going to ripple. And then it's a cumulative effect. But if they all have the same understanding, there's no ripples being made. So I think, and this is just me, what the hell do I know? But with these coaches, I think being able to understand one another and be in that co-design mindset, I think would probably better suit people. And I think that that could be taken into many domains of life, like school systems, coaching, music teachers, whomever, even parenting, relationships, anything like that. And I'm not an expert in any means. I'm not master at any of those. I'm still and even emotions, mental health, all that stuff. Like, I think being able to sit down and have that tribe, I think helps.
Yeah, I think also what you're describing too is like going outside of your box, like
Yeah. Yep.
expanding your, like I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite CLA podcasts is a volleyball podcast. I've never played volleyball in my life. Like the high school coaches tried to make me because I'm 6'4", but that was the extent of it. Um, and I have enjoyed listening to your podcast. You have a very different background in sports and athletics and coaching than I do, and so I think something, yeah, you're describing is like expanding your horizons a bit. Like, don't stay siloed in your
Uh-huh.
community.
Uh-huh.
Seek people. Panther Flows, the horse trainer. Like, so much to learn there.
Yeah.
I'm apologizing to her right now. I keep forgetting her name, but her Instagram handle is memorable, so I'll always remember
Yeah.
that.
No, absolutely. Kathy knows how to do things pretty well to make her memorable, and no, she's an awesome human being. And funny enough, actually, my main sport that I worked with and had some success was with volleyball. And so um, had
As a strength
was
coach?
yep, as a strength coach, where actually the head coach at the time that I was working with at a NCAA school. She was like, she sat me down and is like, "What do you bring to the table?" And I basically laid out, I was like, "Here's what my beliefs is." And she's like, "Okay, do it in the weight room." Did the preseason, did a couple games, or actually went through the preseason, off season, and preseason, and then came to the first 5 games of the year and they won. And I was like, you know, I've been around volleyball enough that I can understand how practices and I understand how the game is played. Can I come to one of your practices? And she's like, come on. So I actually started near the end of my tenure there. I actually started helping out with practice design for volleyball
Oh,
and
cool.
implementing CLA, all of that stuff. And unfortunately, my tenure was cut short at the time, but that was my under like that was my tribe at the time. And seeing volleyball now, I'm seeing volleyball a little bit more now. They're adopting things this way because I think in the USA Olympic Committee, I think some of the coaches are actually starting to implement him a little bit more, and so that's actually reassuring to see too.
Yeah, that's cool. I have a question for you. You've had a lot of experience with successful teams at a high level. What are the top 1 to 3 things? Could be one, two, or three that across the board, every team in the different organizations and the different sports has done that you think has contributed to their success?
Well, I'd never actually funny that you mentioned that because I just put a label on it my last podcast with Kristen Schweizer, and she talks about this thing that saying what she's trying to do with this. She promotes the centaur model where it's the human, the rider, and then the horse where you're the 5% versus the 95%. Regardless of that, what she advocates for is individuals being safe, seen, and soothed. And that clicked so much with me because anytime that I've had successful teams or individuals, I've made them seen, I've made them feel safe, and I didn't coddle them, but I was able to soothe them in ways that would, and soothe can be kind of like that icky word, but soothe in this way is allowing them to be in a framework where they're allowed to be make mistakes and figure things out themselves without me barking orders at them on how to do it. I Looking back, I think I was embodying this ecological approach before I even understood what it was because I allowed them to, I adjusted things on the fly for them. I made it as individualistic as I could from a programming standpoint because I cannot train a 5'4" libero to a right per or from the right who is 6'6". I can't train them the same because they're not the same person. They have different experiences, different injury history. So I had to program in a way that they're on the same program, but they had their own little DNA. So talking with Christian, this was about 2 weeks ago, I believe, when she mentioned you say it, make them feel safe, make them feel seen and feel soothed. That's the big thing that I've been able to do pretty well because if you're able to allow those three things, which humans we want to feel safe, and sometimes I've had kids at youth level where if they feel seen, that might be the only time that they're feeling seen.
Yeah.
Like if they're having something going on in their personal life that they're not being seen, and if I'm giving that to them, they're going to give me that extra effort. Like I think that's the main one. And I think two is being transparent and honest with myself because I've never once said I'm an expert in anything. I'm living this amateur lifestyle. Like I'm never going to be a Greg Souders who has had such success. I'm not going to be an Andre Grandbois who's had some pretty great success. I'm not having Rob Gray. I'm not Rob Gray, who is one of the leading experts in this field with this research and all this stuff. I'm not them. And I'm embodying a little bit of you, a little bit of Greg. I'm stealing. This is actually from a book called Austin Kleon, Steal Like an Artist, is stealing from other people and figuring things out and just being honest, be like, hey, I didn't come up with this. I just took it from this person and I'm applying it and seeing what happens. Being able to like be open and honest. I think those are the two main things in my career that I've done well, and I'm trying to apply that into other areas of my life because I was so siloed in sports performance. Now I'm trying to break away from that. I think those are the main things.
Hmm. Yeah, so it sounds like the first thing is like what you said, safe, seen, and soothed. That sounds like to me in my mind, I'm thinking an athlete-centered coaching.
Yeah,
It's athlete first.
yeah.
Um,
And I joke
on
with
that,
this too. You have student athlete. Well, I was an athlete student. Like I joked, I was never great in school, so I was always the athlete student, and I was like, okay, like I'm making you feel seen first before anything else. But yeah, it's more individual centric versus top down approach.
Mhm. When you described that youth, it made me think of a few that we've had walk through our doors. In the martial arts world, you get this often where a parent will bring in their child who is overweight, and aside, like the parents are wonderful for the most part, as far as I can tell, but you can tell that this kid has not been seen, in other areas, maybe in peers, and they almost kind of shape their body in a way where they want to hide. They don't want to be seen, and they're quiet and timid, and taking a genuine interest in them, like a genuine interest, not making it over the top, just like, hey, I'm really happy you decided to come here. I want to help you with this. And every time they walk through the doors, being like, yes, like you're back. Like, let's do this. Let's have some fun. And then really celebrating their successes too. Um, Legitimately, like kids are smart. They know if you're pandering to them. Like, I'm not going to
Hmm.
celebrate something they were been doing this whole time. or that's not exceptional for them. But if they do something exceptional for them, I will shout it out to the whole class.
Hmm.
And I will go on about it and on, and I'll go on about it for months until the kid's like, "Will you stop already?" I'm like, "No, look what you fucking did! Like, you did it, man!" And I see those kids transform in how they hold their body when they start walking in.
Hmm.
Their shoulders are backing down. They're not, I'm thinking of one in particular who's not no longer timid to try and take risks for fear of losing and looking stupid. He
Hmm.
goes out and he's like dripping sweat by the end of practice. I love that aspect of this, giving especially these young kids who are going through this, early on, 10, 11, 12, they're starting to experience that, like, uh, those feelings of insecurity where you believe everyone is looking at you and judging you. I think
Hmm.
it's like a key component of the adolescent psyche, an unfortunate one, and I'm sure it serves a purpose. But I love working with those kids and
Hmm.
helping them get out of that, or navigate that more skillfully.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you said too about like stealing ideas. I think I don't know if you meant to do this, but you kind of created a bit of a dichotomy between you and Greg, or you and Rob, and like they're no different either. I know you're
Hmm.
aware of
Yeah,
that, but they also are,
yeah,
standing on the shoulders of other people.
for sure.
Um, and I guess I'm speaking to that because for a long time, held myself back because I thought, who am I to? I'm just copying. I don't actually. And then it got to a point where I was like, fuck that. Like, I could die tomorrow, and I'm so passionate about this, and I know the things I've experienced in life, and I've seen the impact I can have on people's lives, and I'm just gonna do it. And I'm not gonna concern myself at all with what that little voice inside my head is saying, and what the other little voice is saying, making me think that other people are judging me. Like, I'm gonna ignore all of that, and I'm just gonna do it.
Hmm.
And I will be the. This is so cliched and cheesy, but it's true and it's honest. Like, I will be the greatest version of myself that I will be, and if I do something akin to what Greg has done or more, great. But that's not the purpose.
Hmm. No, you hit it right there on the head of the nail right there, my friend. Well, I think we covered a lot of different things. Is there anything else that you kind of want to touch on before we head out?
No, I don't think so. I think that was a really enjoyable conversation, and it was really nice getting to know you. And I hope we can do it again.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm more than welcome to having repeats of people because, things change from time to time and that's just how things go. All right. Well, I appreciate you, Andre.
Thank you, Sam.